The rain hammers against the stained glass of Le Nocturne, beating like a slow drum in the dark. Inside, Carmela Costanzo can barely breathe beneath the cold stares of Manhattan's elite. She is the quiet daughter of a ruthless dock king, married to a monster who knows how to play the prince. For 3 years, she has endured a silent, loveless marriage, eating dinner alone, sleeping beside an empty half of a bed, smiling when people pitied her. Tonight her husband's careless laughter finally breaks what is left of her world. Outside the private lounge, wrapped in an $8,000 black velvet gown that feels more like a funeral shroud than a dress, Carmela stands frozen as the life she knew begins to die. The oversized sleeves and high neckline of her heavy gown were meant to hide her, to make the daughter of old Lorenzo Costanzo disappear in a world that measured power by beauty and perfection. She had chosen it because Damien never looked at her anyway. Behind the heavy wooden doors of the private lounge, a sharp, familiar laugh cuts through the warm, cigar-scented air. Carmela knows that voice instantly. It belongs to Damien Valente, her husband of 3 years. A man who commands every room he enters and leaves behind a trail of admiration and quiet fear. She has spent too many lonely nights wondering why a man who looked like old Hollywood royalty ever chose her. Now pressed against the cold doorframe, she listens as another woman asks if he plans to keep playing house with his invisible wife. Damien's answer comes in a low, chilling murmur. It is strategy, he tells the woman. Not a marriage. Outside the door, Carmela feels her chest tighten as his words cut through her. He had never married her. He had married her father's shipping empire. Lorenzo controlled the major shipping lanes, the docks and cargo routes along the East Coast, and the old man only trusted blood. After a heavy silence, Damien's voice slips through the shadows again. He calls Carmela camouflage, nothing more than a way to secure the ports. Once Lorenzo is dead, he says he will discard her with a quiet divorce and a payout. Carmela's knees almost give out. Her fingernails scrape against the cold, gold-flecked marble as she struggles to stay upright. For 3 painful years, she had smiled through charity galas and pretended not to notice the pity in the eyes of other wives. She had learned to enter rooms behind Damien, to lower her voice, to make herself smaller before anyone asked her to. She had hoped, desperately and foolishly, that one day he might see past her body and love the woman inside. But to him, she had never been a wife. She had been a transaction, forcing herself to stand straight. Carmela smooths the front of her velvet dress with trembling hands and leaves the building. Outside, freezing rain washes over her face like a harsh baptism. For 10 minutes, she stands on the flooded Manhattan sidewalk, breathing hard while yellow cabs and city traffic roar past the wreckage of her life. 6 weeks later, tragedy comes. Her father collapses face first onto a poker table in Brooklyn, leaving behind an empire every hungry man on the coast is ready to devour. By the time the paramedics reach that smoke-filled back room, the dock king is already gone, and the sharks are circling at the graveside. Carmela stands in black Armani and dark sunglasses, her face unreadable. Damien stays close, one hand resting possessively on her lower back while cameras capture their polished grief. In his tailored charcoal suit, he plays the perfect morning son-in-law for the crowd. When he leans close and whispers that he will protect her father's legacy, she almost laughs in his face. Only weeks ago, that promise might have broken her. Now it only confirms what she already knows. Men like Damien always promise to guard the house they are already planning to tear down. Carmela only nods. Her silence becomes armor, hiding the fury already gathering strength inside her. She squeezes his hand and says the words expected of her, thanking him in a voice so hollow it barely sounds alive. As the cemetery empties and the long black sedans roll away, Damien stays behind to shake hands and stake his claim to a throne that was never his. What he does not know is that Lorenzo Costanzo never trusted him. 3 months before his death, the old boss called Carmela into his quiet Tribeca study. He stood by the window, broad-shouldered and gray-haired, holding a lowball glass of whiskey. When she sat down, he looked at her with the tired, knowing eyes of a father who had watched his child disappear inside her own marriage. "Damien does not love you, my girl," he said bluntly. He is a parasite, Lorenzo warned. The moment I am gone, he will bleed this family dry. Carmela had tried to defend Damien then, but the words sounded weak even to her. When she asked why her father had allowed the marriage, his scarred face softened with regret. He had hoped he was wrong. He had hoped love might change the man, but he had prepared for the truth. He slid a thick black leather folio across the polished mahogany desk. Inside were Zurich vault keys, offshore accounts, and encrypted access codes, the real heart of the Costanzo Empire. Damien could have the physical docks, the noisy unions, the public face of power. Carmela would hold what truly mattered. Before she left the study, Lorenzo also mentioned a shadow in the Valente family, a hidden son in Philadelphia whose name he had not yet been able to prove. Without your signature, Lorenzo told her, Damien cannot touch $1 of my fortune. He said she deserved better than being used as a stepping stone. He wanted her to leave that marriage not as a discarded wife, but as a woman with power of her own. Back at the graveside, while Damien smiles at dock captains and politicians, Carmela does not cry. She smiles. And for the first time, it is not for him. The following weekend, when Damien leaves for the Hamptons and claims it is a business emergency, she kisses his cheek and wishes him a safe drive. Then she stands at the floor-to-ceiling window of their penthouse and watches his black Mercedes fade into the gray distance. She waits exactly 20 minutes. The end has already begun. The steel safe in Damien's office opens with a soft click, surrendering to a code he never imagined she could guess. Carmela ignores the cash and the black pistol. She reaches instead for a single hard drive labeled insurance in his blocky handwriting. In her late father's private study, she retrieves his 40-year-old ledger from behind a hidden bookshelf panel. 5 pounds of aged paper filled with secrets capable of bringing down half of Manhattan's elite. Her hands shake when she touches it, not from fear alone, but from the weight of what her father had carried. By twilight, she has packed 2 suitcases and booked a flight to Zurich under a secret passport. On Damien's desk, she leaves her diamond wedding ring beneath the cold light of a lamp. She leaves the illusion of her marriage behind with it. The gold band sits alone on the marble, empty of every promise it once pretended to hold. When Damien finally returns to the silent penthouse late Sunday night, the air still carrying traces of his cologne and Serafina's perfume. Carmela is already gone. At first, he does not panic. He stands there with a cynical smirk, assuming she has finally collapsed under the weight of his betrayals. In his mind, women like Carmela do not leave. They cry, they break, and then they come back. But by Tuesday, when his calls die in voicemail and his offshore accounts in the Caymans freeze one after another, the truth begins to settle in. She had not run away to be rescued. She had walked out with the keys to his future. One by one, the financial arteries of the Costanzo Empire freeze. In a dim boardroom, Damien's lawyer calls 6 countries and receives the same answer each time. Access requires biometric approval from the primary holder, and that holder is Carmela. Damien's handsome face drains of color as his gray-haired consigliere, Polly Rizzo, gives him the truth. You control the docks, boss, Polly says, but the money was never yours. Lorenzo had known that power without loyalty was nothing but a trap. From beyond the grave, the old father had protected his daughter, leaving Damien with keys that opened nothing. For the first time, Damien understands that Carmela was never as powerless as he had wanted to believe. Damien's hands curl into fists. In a low, dangerous voice, he orders his men to find his wife, whatever it costs. But Carmela is not returning to his prison. High above Lake Zurich, she sits in silence and watches sunrise spill across the snow-capped Swiss Alps like a woman beginning again. Her healing is not sudden or easy. For weeks, she does little but cry, eat nothing, and stare at the still mountains until her eyes burn. She has spent her whole life shrinking to fit a man's ego, forgetting what it feels like to occupy her own space without apology. Then, slowly, she becomes ready. She avoids Damien's loud, flashy thugs and hires ghosts instead. Quiet professionals who move through the world unseen. A shadow enters the kitchen. Elias Kane, ex-military, ex-intelligence. The kind of man who appears only when a life has been shattered beyond ordinary repair. Dressed in a sharp gray suit, he lays a heavy dossier on the counter and says 4 quiet words. You need me. Inside are photographs of Damien skimming union pension funds and preparing to trade Lorenzo's secrets to federal prosecutors in exchange for immunity. Carmela's voice shakes when she asks why her father never told her. Elias looks at her gently. He wanted you to choose, he says, not because you were forced to, but because you were finished being a victim. Carmela does not answer. She only opens the folder again and begins reading, 1 page at a time. By March, the cold eastern seaboard begins to tremble under the first deep rumblings of a dock workers' strike. What starts as quiet demands for basic health care and fair wages grows into a suffocating shutdown. Cargo ships sit idle. Millions of dollars in goods rot in the harbor. Every hour costs Damien Valente a fortune. He storms into union offices, smashing chairs and shouting threats. But the men across the table only stare back with cold, tired eyes. They want what they are owed. Damien cannot see the money feeding them from the shadows, doubling their strike funds through silent offshore accounts. The people who built his kingdom have finally stopped moving for him. Those invisible funds keep the workers fed and steady, while Carmela watches Damien's world collapse from her quiet sanctuary in Switzerland. She does not simply want him ruined. She wants him to pull his own life apart with his own hands. By April, as cash drains from him, rival gangs begin circling like wolves, offering lifelines meant to choke him later. Desperate and alone, Damien turns to the Russian Mafia. In a dark Brighton beach club, Victor Solov, a towering man built from scar tissue, smiles like a shark. You need money, Victor says. Damien keeps his back straight, but his fingers twitch against the glass in front of him. He knows Victor has already smelled blood. Damien swallows what is left of his pride and calls it a temporary setback. Victor laughs, mocking the polite phrases Americans use when they are broke. Clenching his jaw, Damien asks for a $50 million loan. Victor leans back and studies him like a dying animal. What is the collateral? In that quiet, fatal moment, Damien signs away everything. The Tribeca properties, the Brooklyn warehouses, the casinos. He walks out believing he has been saved. He has no idea that Victor does not own the debt. Carmela does. She bought the Russian's entire portfolio weeks earlier. Damien has run from his consequences, straight into the hands of the woman he hurt. Every dollar he borrows, and every piece of land he signs away, flows back to the woman he once dismissed as background noise. In her Swiss study, Elias hands Carmela the signed contracts and tells her Damien has just given her everything. She stares at her husband's signature with no triumph in her eyes. Soon, she says, he will give me more. By summer, Damien is a ghost of himself. The strike ends in June, but the damage is complete. His clients flee. The unions hate him, and his mornings dissolve into alcohol-soaked panic. His designer suits hang loose on his shrinking body. His once sharp face is covered in rough stubble. The performance is beginning to fail. The July heat is heavy when Serafina leaves. There is no dramatic fight. No tears, only the clean zip of designer suitcases while Damien sleeps off whiskey on the leather couch. By nightfall, she is over the Atlantic, chasing another man's fortune. When Damien wakes, the silence of the empty penthouse is louder than any argument. He has no strength left to mourn a shallow love. His true nightmare is Carmela, who has vanished completely. 6 countries are searched. Private databases are hacked. Nothing, a life built on stolen ground, has finally begun to sink. Standing on his balcony 30 stories above the city, Damien feels his phone buzz. He answers, and her soft voice turns his blood cold. Her voice is silk wrapped around a blade. She ignores his ragged breathing and calmly tells him the strike is over. His empire survived, she says, for now. Damien's hand shakes around his glass as he demands to know where she is and what she wants. Collecting, she answers. For 3 years. He stripped away her dignity and made her believe she was worthless. Now the debt has come due. I will not stop until there is nothing left, she tells him. When he calls her insane, her answer is cold. I am awake. Then the line goes dead, alone in the dark with his scotch. Damien understands at last that she did not disappear to cry. She disappeared to learn where every weakness was buried. Her promise hangs in the stale air of the penthouse. By 3 a.m, a panicked call brings Paulie Rizzo to the door, disheveled and rubbing sleep from his eyes. He finds Damien standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the amber lights of the city. "She called me," Damien rasps, his voice stripped raw. Paulie freezes as Damien explains that Carmela is coming for everything. When Damien finally turns, the dim yellow light catches his face, and Paulie has to fight the urge to flinch. The confident boss is gone. In his place stands a man discovering that power is only a thin mask until the storm tears it away. Damien's eyes are wide and bloodshot, fixed somewhere past Paulie, as if he is watching his own ghost. "She has been playing me this whole time," he mutters. Paulie tries to reason with him, but Damien cuts him off with a laugh that sounds like breaking glass. The strike, the frozen accounts, the pressure from the Russians. It was all her. She has been taking him apart one move at a time. Paulie pours whiskey, the ice clicking softly in the glass. "What is her endgame?" he asks. Damien's answer comes as a whisper. "Revenge for me being me." The words land harder than he expects. For one uncomfortable second, even he hears how small they sound. His voice drops into a low, icy murmur. "I spent 3 years underestimating her because I thought kindness was weakness," he says. "Now she is going to show me how wrong I was." Thousands of miles away, cold blue dawn spills across Lake Zurich. Carmela sits in her study, elegant in a tailored silk suit. Elias stands beside her, the glow of the screen lighting his face as he details Damien's frantic calls. "He is looking for you," Elias says, "but our trails are buried too deep." Carmela takes a slow sip of coffee, her eyes reflecting the lake. She has traded velvet silence for something sharper. It does not make her happy. It only makes her harder to reach. Carmela sets her cup down with a soft, deliberate click in the silent room. Elias asks how far this will go, pointing out that Damien is already bleeding money and his name is in ruins. She does not blink. "It ends when he knows what it feels like to be erased," she says, her voice empty of anger. "When he understands what it means to be nothing to the world." Elias gives a grim nod. "You're building his funeral," he murmurs. Carmela does not deny it, but her mouth tightens as if the words still cost her something. 3 days later, the next nail goes in. A formal letter lands on Damien's desk from the Russian syndicate, due to sudden financial irregularities. His $50 million loan is being called in. Damien reads the page twice, hoping the words will change. The paper in Damien's hand feels heavier than lead. In one stroke, the Russian mob has seized almost everything. The Tribeca High Rises, the Brooklyn warehouses, the Atlantic City casinos. He stares at the blurred print, chest tight, then calls Victor. Through the speaker, Victor sounds casual, almost bored. "It is only business, my friend," he says, brushing aside decades of blood and loyalty. When Damien begs for 2 weeks to fix the accounts, Victor laughs. A hollow mocking sound. "You do not even have 2 days." Damien, the line crackles with silence. Damien looks around his office and realizes how much of his life was never truly his. "I am not finished," Damien whispers, but the deadline answers with silence. In his world, a marked man has 48 hours before a quiet bullet finds him. Panic crawls beneath his skin. He needs leverage, some kind of armor. And then he remembers the ledger, Lorenzo's black book. 40 years of blackmail, bribes and secrets that could bury the city. It is his only hope. But Carmela took it when she disappeared. She holds his last breath in her hands. He grabs his coat with frantic, trembling movements. Paulie stands in the dim hallway, blocking him, worry heavy in his eyes. "Where are you going?" Paulie asks. Damien looks through his oldest friend. "To make a phone call," he mutters. Damien's eyes are hollow. "I am calling my wife," he says, across the ocean. At 10:47 in the morning, Carmela's phone vibrates on her desk. She answers with calm precision. Damien's voice is a ragged scrape. "I need the ledger. Carmela, I know you took it." She stands by the window and watches sailboats glide over the blue Swiss water. Why would I hand you your survival? She asks. Damien offers money, and she laughs lightly, a sound that chills him more than any threat. You still think everything has a price, she says, when he begs to know what she wants. She watches a boat vanish across the lake. I want you to feel what I felt every day for 3 years. Shadows stretch across the empty room. Through the speaker, Carmela's voice comes slowly, carrying years of being invisible in his house. Damien's chest heaves as he stammers an apology, but she cuts him off. He is not sorry. He is afraid. She reminds him of his own words, of the way he laughed with his mistress and called his wife camouflage. The tragedy between them was never born from one sudden act of hatred. It came from every dinner he missed, every touch he avoided, every cruel silence he forced her to swallow. With a sharp click, the line goes dead. Damien stares at the black screen, feeling the weight of something that cannot be undone. Deep inside him, something snaps. With a desperate cry, Damien hurls the phone across the room. It shatters against the cold marble fireplace. In the doorway, Paulie stands still, a quiet shadow in the flickering light, watching his friend burn from the inside. Feel better? Paulie asks dryly. Damien turns on him, eyes wide and hollow with the full terror of his own ruin. Paulie hands him a glass of amber scotch and lays out 2 choices. Run to some far corner of the world and hide, or confess his failure to the commission. Damien drinks, knowing they might kill him. The ledger remains his only hope. Worse than that, Carmela remains the only person who can give it to him. Damien stares at his friend, sickened by the suggestion of using his own wife as bait. But in their world, survival always asks for one last betrayal. Soon he is sitting in a dark, wood-paneled room in Brooklyn that smells of stale smoke, a room frozen somewhere in 1973. Around him sit 5 mob bosses whose eyes carry only pity and contempt. He can almost feel the cold edge of an executioner's blade. Carlo Messina, a 72-year-old patriarch built like iron, speaks first. He offers no comfort, only a brutal autopsy of Damien's fading power, mocking his shaking hands. Damien does not argue. That silence tells the table more than any confession could. Carlo leans back, his voice dropping like an anvil as he tells Damien he has lost everything to the Russians. Damien's throat turns dry under the weight of the table's stare. To save himself, he throws down his final card. His wife has Lorenzo Costanzo ledger. At the mention of 40 years of blackmail, the room goes still. Damien tells them everything. Her escape, the frozen accounts, the way she has changed from obedient wife into a shadow he cannot reach. When they ask if he can retrieve the ledger, he hesitates and gives them a weak promise. Tony Greco's dead eyes narrow. Nobody at that table believes him. Damien knows it. And still he keeps talking. Marco Duca, the youngest boss at 43, smiles with cold hunger and suggests they skip diplomacy. Carlo warns him that kidnapping Lorenzo's daughter could bring a bloodbath. But Marco dismisses the risk. Lorenzo is dead, he says, and Carmela is fair game. Ex-military guards are not. In that dark theater of greed, Damien slowly nods, agreeing to treat his wife not as a person, but as property to be taken by force. When they ask what should happen if she gets hurt, something flickers across his face. Regret, maybe, or only fear. Then he murmurs his final betrayal. Do what you have to do. The words leave his mouth before he can take them back. At 4:37 in the afternoon, Elias Kane intercepts the warning transmission. He finds Carmela in the library, gently closing a rare French book she has not really read. When he tells her a ruthless snatch team from Prague is coming to make her disappear, her expression stays strangely calm. She walks to the window and looks out at the mirror-like lake, a view too peaceful for the violence moving toward it. Instead of running, she chooses to stand. Elias protests, but she reminds him that the estate was built to be defended. Her hands are steady, but her breathing is not. She is afraid. She simply refuses to let fear decide where she is allowed to live. Elias lays out the defense system, cameras, motion sensors. and an armed team strong enough to withstand a serious assault. Carmela gives him a simple answer. We hold. Elias cannot understand why she would risk her life when she could vanish to safety within 2 hours. But she looks at him with eyes carved from ice. Nothing left of the frightened housewife she had been only months before. Betrayal has weaponized her. If I die, she says with a chilling smile, Damien will answer to the underworld for letting Lorenzo Sanzo Casanzo's daughter be murdered while he hid behind the commission. Elias does not like it, but he understands. She is not just defending a house. She is setting a trap. Elias begins full lockdown, but Carmela stops him with one final instruction. She wants cameras everywhere, streaming live to 3 countries. She is not only preparing a defense, she is writing her testimony. If she dies, she wants the world to see Damien's betrayal for itself. 3 nights later, under a moonless sky at 2:47 in the morning, the assault team arrives. 6 men in dark tactical gear slip through the shadows like living nightmares. The lake is still. The trees do not move. For a few seconds, the estate looks untouched, almost peaceful. Then one of the men crosses the outer sensor, and the night splits open. The silence breaks when the perimeter alarms trigger 50 meters beyond the tree line. Inside, sirens scream through the estate. Elias' voice crackles in Carmela's earpiece, reporting 6 heavily armed hostiles. She stands in the safe room, watching the security feeds. Her heart pounds, but her hands are steady. At 2:51 in the morning, floodlights explode across the lawn. Warnings ring out in 6 languages, but the intruders keep coming, ignoring every last chance to turn back. Carmela sees one of them raise a weapon toward the east wing. Her mouth goes dry. There is no courtroom here, no appeal, no mercy, only the choice to survive the next minute. The shadows did not simply move that cold Swiss night. They seemed to breathe. When the men crept too close, Elias' team opened fire. Suppressed rifles hissing from the tree line and shredding the wet grass. It was a final warning before the earth drank blood. The attackers answered with flashbangs and automatic fire, turning the quiet countryside into a war zone. Carmela watched from the security room, her face pale in the cold glow of the monitors. Muzzle flashes strobed in the dark like a brutal dance, but the blood on the ground was real. She had imagined revenge as control. In that moment, it looked only like noise, panic and bodies falling in the rain. The firefight lasts exactly 11 minutes. But to Carmela it feels like 11 hours. When the hit squad finally retreats into the dark pines, the estate stands wounded, its beautiful garden reduced to black mud. Still she is alive. Elias finds her in the glow of the monitors, pale and trembling. When he confirms they captured every angle of the attack, she does not cry. She tells him to send the footage to the papers and every major network. The world needs to see what happened. Elias hesitates. Once it goes out, he warns there is no taking it back. Carmela looks at the smoking lawn on the screen and says, good. She wants everyone to witness what happens when powerful men decide a woman has no right to leave their shadow. Elias nods and sends the files. For 3 years, Carmela lived like a ghost wrapped in silence. Now her sanctuary is ruined. But something colder and brighter has taken its place. Damien Valente is about to learn that when a wounded soul is pushed too far, it does not always break. Sometimes it fights back with everything it has left. Within 48 hours, the encrypted footage spreads across the internet, turning her private nightmare into public evidence. Carmela watches the headlines from Zurich with no smile on her face. Exposure feels less like victory than standing naked in a storm. But she does not look away. The trap closes with terrifying precision. Damien cannot deny the evidence when his own face appears in a leaked photo and phone records connect him to the attack. Even the hidden money begins whispering to federal accountants. When Carlo Messina calls him at 11 on a quiet Thursday night, his voice is as cold as a grave. There are no greetings, only a sentence. Damien is finished. He has put the entire family under the eyes of the law, losing his wife, his wealth, and his future in a single night. Damien tries to speak, but Carlo cuts him off. You made us look weak, he says, in their world. That is worse than failure. The dial tone hisses like a final breath. leaving Damien alone in the shadows of his empty Tribeca penthouse. He has 48 hours to vanish or face the guns of the men who once called him brother. He treated Carmela like something fragile and useless, only to watch her rise and tear his world apart. As he packs one bag with cash and a weapon he barely knows how to use, he wonders when his fate slipped out of his hands. Across the ocean, Carmela stands beside bullet-scared windows, watching sunrise over Lake Zurich with a quiet glass of wine. She has been reborn in the fire of his betrayal, but the fire has taken something from her too. The truth strikes Damien like a physical blow. His downfall began 3 years earlier, the moment he looked across Lorenzo's table and saw Carmela as an asset instead of a human being. Now he sits in a cheap Newark motel that reeks of harsh chemicals, staring at his keys and understanding the cost of his greed. Across the ocean, Carmela reads the news of his ruin over coffee at 6 a.m. The headlines talk about the collapse of his empire, but she feels no joy. As long as Damien is alive and capable of rebuilding, the story is unfinished. Revenge has moved the pieces exactly where she wanted them, yet her hands still feel cold. If anyone looked closely at Carmela's face, they would see a victory that feels like defeat. As long as Damien breathes, she remains tied to his ghost, forever known as the wife who fought back. She wants more than revenge. She wants erasure. Elias finds her by the lake, her silhouette dark against the gray water. "You did it," he says softly. He is finished. She does not turn. As Elias asks what more she wants. When she finally looks at him, her gaze is ice. "I want him to feel betrayal from the only person he ever trusted. He made me feel worthless for 3 years. Now he needs to understand what it costs to treat someone like nothing. He thinks this is about money and power," Carmela says, her voice barely rising above the wind. He still does not understand. "What is it about?" Then Elias asks. She turns back to the water. "Being seen," she says quietly. "For once in my life. Being seen." Elias nods, but his phone buzzes and breaks the quiet. "We have a problem," he says, showing her a photo of Damien in a Newark cafe, sitting across from a silver-haired man. That is Nathan Webb, former CIA. If Damien is talking to him, he is planning to disappear under a new identity. Elias pauses before adding one more detail. Webb once worked jobs for Vittorio Valente's hidden Philadelphia branch. Cold dread settles in Carmela's chest. "How long do we have?" she asks. 48 hours. Elias says. "If he gets into Webb's pipeline, we will never find him." Carmela stares at the photo of her husband, rage and panic fighting inside her. She has spent months destroying him piece by piece, only for him to slip away at the end. "Can you stop it?" she asks. Elias meets her eyes. "That depends on how far you are willing to go." Within 6 hours. A dark plan forms as Elias calls in favors from old contacts who owe him blood debts. By midnight, Carmela sits in the safe room, watching a satellite feed of Damien pacing like a caged animal. "Webb's operators are picking him up tomorrow morning," Elias explains. "If we wait, we lose the window." Carmela nods. "What is the play?" "We take him, bring him here, and let you finish this face-to-face," Elias says. "But understand this. Once we cross that line, there is no going back. If it goes wrong, you are fighting governments, not just the commission." Carmela looks at him with cold resolve. "I stopped caring about lines 4 months ago. At 3:17 in the morning, the motel door blows inward. Damien reaches for his gun, but a flashbang splits the dark. Blinded, he throws one punch before a taser shuts his body down and leaves him helpless on the floor. Damien falls hard, gasping as heavy zip ties bind his wrists. A thick black hood is pulled over his head, plunging him into total darkness. For 12 hours, there is only the endless drone of engines as a private jet crosses the Atlantic. When the hood is finally removed inside a Swiss villa overlooking Lake Zurich, his eyes struggle to adjust. In the center of the room stands Carmela, dressed in black silk, her face carved from ice. The shock of seeing her cuts deeper than any blow. Neither of them speaks for 5 seconds. Then Carmela nods to the guards. "Leave us," she says. Damien hears the door open behind him and understands that no one is coming to save him. Elias hesitates and says her name in warning, but Carmela does not move. "I said leave us," she repeats. The guards step out. The heavy doors close with the finality of a tomb. Carmela and Damien stand 10 feet apart, staring like strangers. She is different now. Her posture, her silence, the authority in the way she breathes. "Hello, Damien," she says. He swallows, his throat dry. "You kidnapped me," he whispers. She gives him a faint, bitter smile. "I would say we are even." He looks around for a way out and finds none. He is trapped in the cage he made. "What do you want?" he asks. Carmela steps closer, her footsteps soft. "I want you to look at me. Really look at me," she says. 3 years ago, Damien saw weakness, a woman begging for his love. Now his hands tremble. "I see someone who wants me dead," he says. Carmela smiles coldly. "You spent 3 years treating me like I was invisible. I had to make you see me. Congratulations." Damien spits. "You destroyed my life." "No," she replies. "You still do not understand." "Then explain it." "Your father, Vittorio Valente, knew everything," she says, and the words break the room open. "He knew about Serafina, about you calling me camouflage, about your plan to divorce me the second my father died. He also knew there was another son watching from Philadelphia." Damien stands there, the warmth draining from his face as betrayal settles into his chest. Carmela opens the folder with slow, deliberate grace, revealing surveillance photos and transcripts. His own father had watched him like a suspect for 2 years. He did not trust him. He believed Damien's arrogance would destroy their legacy, and he feared the hidden Philadelphia son would one day try to take what was left. So Vittorio made a quiet agreement with Carmela's father. Damien feels the room tilt. "What kind of agreement?" he whispers. Carmela remains calm. Vittorio agreed to the marriage on one condition: if Damien betrayed her, his empire would be dismantled and transferred to Carmela. She hands him the paper. Damien's fingers shake so violently he can barely hold it still. His eyes scan the signatures and stamps that confirm his ruin. It is real. His own father traded away his future before he even walked down the aisle. "Why?" he asks, his voice splintering in the quiet room. "Because he knew what you were," Carmela says softly. "A man who mistakes cruelty for strength." She takes the contract back, leaving him empty-handed. Vittorio wanted to teach his son a lesson. When Damien failed, he gave Carmela the tools to finish him. Damien sinks into a chair, for the first time. He does not look angry. He looks abandoned. Her words cut through the heavy silence, leaving him with a choice that is hardly a choice at all. She demands everything: hidden offshore accounts, phantom companies, and full cooperation with federal authorities. If he refuses, she will release enough evidence to put a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head and make him a target for every crew from coast to coast. Damien stares at her, hollowed out by the knowledge that every road ahead leads toward a grave. He wants to hate her cleanly, the way he has hated enemies all his life. But this is not clean. She is holding a mirror in front of him, and every reflection in it belongs to him. She leans close, her breath cold against his cheek, and paints the 2 futures waiting for him. One offers a miserable sliver of survival. The other promises a lonely, painful death. But before Damien can answer, the heavy wooden doors burst open. Elias rushes in, his face pale. "The commission has not sanctioned Damien," he says. "They have targeted Carmela." The room turns to ice as he reveals the detail. A $10 million bounty has been placed on her head. In one heartbeat, the hunter becomes the prey. Damien looks at Carmela, and for the first time since she walked into the room, his expression changes. It is not concern exactly. It is recognition. They are both trapped now. Carmela turns her dark, unblinking eyes toward Damien, who sits in the shadows with horror and strange satisfaction fighting across his face. "They are going to kill you," he whispers. She puts the truth together at once. The leaked footage made them look weak, Damien leans back and exhales slowly. In our world, humiliation is worse than murder, he says. They do not play games. They erase problems. Elias stands nearby, his voice tight with panic. We have hours. $10 million will bring every killer in Europe to this door. Carmela looks from Elias to Damien. She had built a cage for him, without meaning to. She has stepped inside it too. I can get you to Southeast Asia by tomorrow, Elias says, already searching for escape routes. No, Carmela says. Both men stare at her. If you stay, you die, Elias insists. Carmela looks out at the gray, misty lake. Running has never freed her from anything. It only changes the shape of the room. Cut him loose, she says, nodding toward Damien. Elias gasps. Remove his ties. She repeats. Elias warns that Damien will run. But Carmela knows better. No, she says. He wants to live. Damien looks at her then. Truly looks. And understands she is not offering forgiveness. She is offering a transaction cold enough to keep them breathing. Give me their safe houses and operations, Carmela demands. In exchange, I will give you what you wanted from the beginning. Damien looks at her. Emptied out. What is that? Carmela smiles, sharp as broken glass. A chance to destroy the people who just tried to kill us both. Silence stretches for 10 long seconds. Then Damien laughs. A dark, broken sound from a man who understands how cruelly fate has written the scene. You are insane, he says. I am desperate. She corrects. They are already trying to kill us. We only get to decide whether we die alone in the dark or make them afraid first. Damien looks down at the zip ties around his wrists. He knows she is right. Damien turns back to her. If we survive, what happens to me? Carmela meets his gaze without softness. You disappear. New identity. New country. And we never meet again. But you get to live. Which is more than they are offering. Damien sits in silence, weighing what remains of his life. Then he slowly holds out his bound wrists. Elias hesitates before cutting the ties. As the ropes fall away, Damien rubs his skin and stares at the woman who destroyed him and is now offering him a way to survive. Where do we start? He asks. Carmela unrolls a map. By making them regret underestimating Lorenzo Costanzo's daughter. Within 40 minutes, the grand dining table becomes a war room. Elias clears the marble surface and spreads intelligence reports across it like invasion plans. Damien stands opposite Carmela, looking like a man who has just signed a pact with the devil. She watches him with folded arms and guarded eyes. She does not trust him. He knows that. He does not ask her to. The commission has 5 crews, Damien says. Boston, Newark, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Brooklyn. Carlo Messina's the spider. Elias places red pins on the map and asks how long they have. They are already moving. Damien warns. Maybe 12 hours. If we are lucky. They will send professionals. Damien warns. Men who do not miss. Carmela's jaw tightens. Then we hit them first. Both men stare at her. This is the commission, Damien says. 5 families with centuries of power. Carmela cuts him off. They put a $10 million bounty on my head. Every killer in the country is looking for me. We do not wait. We make them bleed. The words sound harsher than she intended, and for a moment even she hears it. Elias studies her and understands what she has already accepted. There may be no safe way out. Carmela points to the Brooklyn pin. We start with Carlo. Damien gives a broken, humorless laugh. Assassinate Carlo in Brooklyn. He is guarded by an army. I want to make him vulnerable. Carmela corrects calmly. There is a difference. Damien asks how. She looks straight at him. You are going to call him. His laughter dies. You will tell Carlo, you have something valuable enough to bring him out of his fortress. Damien's face pales. What could I possibly have? Carmela lifts the black ledger, the one holding 40 years of her father's secrets. Elias draws in a sharp breath. Carmela, that is our only shield. She holds the book like a weapon, but her fingers tighten around it for a moment. It is still her father's legacy. Then we use it as bait. Damien stares at it as if it might explode. You are serious. Completely, she says, her voice does not shake. And that frightens him more than the plan. When he shows up, we end this, Carmela says. Elias folds his arms. Define end. Her eyes do not move. However, we have to. Damien speaks carefully. You are talking about killing a commission boss. Every family in the country will hunt you. They are already coming, she says. At least I take Carlo with me, for the first time that night. Nobody speaks. The map on the table seems too small for the lives about to be ruined. Elias gives a grim shrug. I work for her. But even if everything goes right, there is a 70% chance we all die, and the other 30. Carmela asks. Elias smiles without warmth. We become legends. At 4 in the afternoon, Damien's hand shakes as he makes the call. He presses his palm flat to the table so Carlo will not hear it in his voice. In the dim blue glow of the dashboard, Elias hovers over his screen, tracing the signal. Damien dials, each number landing like a drop of rain against glass. On the third ring, Carlo Messina answers, his voice heavy, old and deadened by years of blood. Damien speaks steadily, offering the one thing that could stop the bleeding. Lorenzo Costanzo, original ledger. Carlo curses in disbelief, but Damien reads from the pages. March 1000. 997. $200,000 to dismiss charges. Routed through Redstone Holdings. Account 4000. 471 B 9033. Then August 2003. The execution of Daniel Raichi. On the other end of the line. Carlo stops breathing. In the silence, Damien realizes the old man is afraid. The ghosts of the broken empire begin to speak. Vincent Greco, their old enforcer, buried Daniel Raichi beneath a Hoboken foundation that now supports a luxury high-rise. Through the transatlantic static, Carlo's breath catches. Lorenzo kept records of everything, every murder from Boston to Miami. And now Carmela has it all. Carlos' laugh sounds like gravel sliding down metal as he reminds Damien of the bounty on her head. But at this point, survival is the only currency that matters. They agree to meet at a ruined warehouse in Red Hook, public enough to make a clean execution risky, isolated enough to keep federal eyes away. Neither side believes the other. That is why the trap might work. Midnight is chosen as the hour of reckoning. Neutral ground. 5 men per side. The exchange will happen under harsh floodlights, with no shadows to hide in. Both sides know it is a trap. The only question is who will fire first. Carmela spends the afternoon preparing for war, pulling on black tactical gear while Elias fits her with a concealed vest. It feels tight and suffocating, like a straitjacket made of Kevlar and old promises. When he offers to go in her place, she refuses. Carlo must look into her eyes and see no fear. Elias hands her a Glock 19. She chambers around and feels the weight settle against her ribs. Her father taught her to shoot when she was 12. A bitter lesson wrapped in love. Men may leave women to defend themselves. They fly into New York at 9 that night. The city below them spread out like a cold grid of diamonds and buried secrets. Carmela looks down, her chest tightening. This city had watched her become a wife, a ghost, a widow's daughter, and now something she still cannot name. They arrive at the Red Hook waterfront, where a rusted warehouse stands against the black tide. 3 dark vehicles are already waiting. Elias kills the engine 50 yards away, and the silence becomes almost unbearable. He gives them one last chance to turn back. Neither Carmela nor Damien moves. Elias gives them the hard rules of survival. If gunfire starts, run and do not look back. Damien only sighs and mutters that if shooting starts, they are already dead. They step into the warehouse. The place feels clinical under blinding white floodlights, as if everyone has been placed on a stage for a tragedy already written. Carlo Messina stands in the center, flanked by 4 armed guards in tailored suits. At 72, Carlo is built like a granite block. His eyes are cold and empty. The eyes of a man who has seen countless deaths and remembered none of the faces. He looks at Carmela, and a slow, terrible smile spreads across his mouth. Carlo says Lorenzo's daughter has changed. Carmela replies that she grew up. You grew dangerous, he says. She steps within 10 feet of him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne beneath stale cigar smoke. She asks why he put a price on her head. He tells her she embarrassed the commission. Carmela places the black leather ledger on an overturned crate, under the harsh lights. The small book seems heavier than it should. 40 years of secrets bound in cowhide and blood. Carlo stares at the prize, then gestures for one of his men to verify the trade. Carmela does not blink. Damien, standing 2 steps behind her, keeps watching the rafters. Under the warehouse glare, a scarred enforcer with lifeless eyes spends 3 minutes verifying the ledger, cross-checking names on his phone before nodding to Carlo. Carmela stands firm. Her father never trusted digital files. She says this is the only copy. She reminds Carlo that if she had more ammunition to ruin him, she would have used it already. Carlo gives her a grim smile and orders his men to take the book. But Damien sees movement near the loading bay. 2 extra gunmen Carlo never admitted bringing. In that split second, survival overrides every plan. Damien lunges, pulls the Glock from Carmela's holster, and fires 3 rapid shots at Carlo. The roar of gunfire shatters the warehouse. 2 enforcers crash onto the concrete. A third spins as a bullet tears through his shoulder. Old Carlo dives behind a crate with shocking speed. Through the thick haze of cordite, Elias drags Carmela backward. Panic flashes across her face as she screams for Damien. But he has already gone into a place where consequences no longer matter. He mutters that he is ending this and walks into the chaos like a ghost, stumbling through the debris. Carmela is forced toward the exit by Elias, bursting out into the freezing November night, while the warehouse screams behind them. She keeps looking back, furious at herself for caring whether Damien follows. Elias pulls Carmela toward the getaway car, his radio buzzing with frantic reports of casualties through shattered windows. Dark figures move behind columns of smoke before a heavy silence falls. Carmela freezes, unable to abandon the man who was once her husband to the violent fate he chose for himself. Then the front doors burst open. Damien stumbles out, covered in blood, moving mechanically with his Glock. When Carlos' last gunman appears behind him with raised sights, Carmela does not hesitate. She snatches Elias' pistol and fires with both hands, just as her father once taught her. The shot leaves her ears ringing. The decision leaves the rest of her body numb. The bullet strikes the enforcer in the chest and drops him instantly. Damien turns and sees Carmela standing in the cold light, smoke curling from her barrel. For one brief moment, recognition passes between them. 2 people who destroyed each other's lives and still chose to keep each other alive. Elias barks at them to move, and they run as sirens begin to wail in the distance. Hours later, in a bleak New Jersey basement, Damien tends to his bleeding ribs while Elias coordinates their escape. Carmela stands silent, staring at her own hands. She has taken a life. It does not feel like power. It feels like something inside her has cracked and gone quiet. Elias hangs up, fury burning behind his eyes as he turns on Damien. But Damien, sweating and exhausted, gives only a bitter laugh. There was never going to be a trade, he says. Carlo was stalling for backup to surround the warehouse. Damien insists he saved Carmela by shooting Carlo 3 times before Carlos' men dragged him away. Now the commission will fracture. Carmela whispers that they were almost killed. Damien's reply is cold at first. We were already dying. I just chose a direction. Then his voice drops. I have been choosing wrong for years, he adds almost too quietly to hear. He does not apologize. Not yet, but the sentence hangs there like the beginning of one. Groaning from the pain in his ribs, he tells Carmela that this is what revenge really looks like. Blood, chaos, and no one walking away clean. As she stares at him, a cold truth settles inside her. For 4 months, she dismantled his life to teach him pain, only to become the kind of person she feared. Someone capable of pulling a trigger without hesitation. Revenge has not healed her. It has only taught her a different language of survival. When she asks what comes next, Elias says they have to run. Carlos' syndicate will regroup. And now they are targets. Damien asks how long they have to hide. Elias only looks at Carmela in silence. Elias explains that this is their life now. False names. Constant paranoia. and never staying anywhere long enough to feel safe. Carmela walks to the window and looks out at the quiet suburbs, realizing that her search for justice has opened the door to endless war. Pain had promised her a clean ending, but violence never gives clean endings. Then Elias delivers another blow. In the chaos, no one secured the ledger. Carlos' men have it. 40 years of secrets are now in enemy hands. Carmela closes her eyes, but Elias pulls out his tablet and shows them high-definition footage of the firefight from 3 different angles, a small shield in a dark world. Carmela stares at the tablet, stunned. Elias explains that recording everything is how he survives. It is his insurance policy. The footage proves Damien acted in self-defense. But more importantly, it proves the Commission authorized violence on American soil. Damien asks what their move is. Elias smiles and suggests giving it to the FBI. The idea hangs in the room like a bomb. Cooperation means turning their backs on everything they came from. Damien warns that it will mark them forever. Elias answers that they are already marked. This is only a shield. Carmela looks from one man to the other. The old rules have given her nothing but graves. Maybe it is time to break them. Under the flickering light of a cheap motel, Carmela looks at Damien. For the first time in 4 months, they are on the same side. Hunted desperate, cornered when she asks what he thinks. Damien meets her eyes, his voice rough and quiet. He tells her that her father would be proud. She did what Lorenzo always wanted. She fought back, refused to be erased, and proved her kindness had never been weakness. Carmela studies him carefully, searching for manipulation and finding only exhaustion. "Do not make this sound noble," she says. He nods. "It is not noble. It is just the truth." With a heavy breath, Carmela tells Elias to make the call. They are federal witnesses now. The scene shifts to a windowless room in Northern Virginia, where fluorescent lights hum with cold bureaucratic indifference. For 40 minutes, 2 federal prosecutors watch the footage in silence, rewinding and taking notes while exchanging unreadable glances. Damien sits across from Carmela, looking as though he has aged 10 years in one night. A makeshift bandage wraps his ribs, and his ruined suit looks like a costume from a life he can never return to. Finally, lead prosecutor Sarah Chen closes her laptop. Her eyes are sharp as she studies them. "The footage is enough," she says, "to bring charges against the entire commission, but only if they are willing to give the government everything else. The deal demands total cooperation. Every name, every drop-off point, every transaction they ever saw in the dark. In exchange, the government offers witness protection, a thin chance to vanish into ordinary lives and die of old age instead of from a bullet." Carmela looks at Damien. Something passes between them that is not forgiveness and not love, but a deep, tragic understanding. They have destroyed each other. Yet they are the only 2 people who know the full weight of what they carry. When Carmela quietly asks what happens to them, Sarah Chen understands the real question. They can choose to go together or apart. Carmela nods, because neither answer feels like freedom. Chen admits they may enter protection together or separately. Though few couples survive the isolation and fear. "We are already broken," Damien says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of everything that cannot be undone. Carmela does not correct him. For 6 grueling days, they sit in separate rooms while federal agents dissect their lives. Every bank record and offshore account is dragged into the light, including the bloody details from Switzerland and Red Hook. On the 7th day, Chen returns, her face unusually pale. "Carlo Messina is stable," she says, "and he has started talking." The fragile hope of peace shatters at once. Damien's hand tightens around his paper cup until it caves in. Carmela looks up from the cold coffee she has been nursing. "What did you say?" Detective Chen sits across from them and drops a thick folder onto the metal table. "Carlo Messina is cooperating," she says. "The other bosses voted to cut him loose. So he flipped. He is naming names, and yours is on the list." Damien goes completely still. Mine. Chen pulls out a transcript. "Both of you. According to Carlo, the hit in Switzerland was a rogue operation funded by someone else." Carmela's stomach drops. Hu Chen looks at Damien. "Your father." Damien stares in disbelief. My father has been dead for 2 years. Your half-brother. Then Chen corrects. Chen slides a photograph across the wooden table, the glossy paper catching the harsh light. Marcus Valente, she says. Your father had a secret family in Philadelphia. He is 38. Ex-military. And brilliant. Carmela slowly picks up the photo. The man shares Damien's sharp jawline and their father's cold, calculating eyes. He is orchestrating a coup to seize the Valente and Costanzo empires. Chen continues. Carmela is his obstacle, and Damien is collateral. Damien lets out a bitter laugh. So the bastard wants to inherit a collapsed empire. Restructuring. Chen corrects. Carmela remembers Lorenzo's warning in the Tribeca study. The shadow in Philadelphia. It had not been paranoia. It had been a map. He has crews in 3 major cities. Chen continues. Her voice tight. Protected by high-level federal contacts your father cultivated before he died. Make no mistake. He is hunting you. Carmela sets the photograph down slowly. Where is he? He has gone dark. Chen admits. No electronic footprint. He vanished. From the shadowed corner, Elias finally speaks, his deep voice cutting through the tension. He is waiting. He looks at both of them, waiting for you to surface. He knows the system. He knows safe houses and protocols. When you finally lower your guard, he will strike. Silence settles over the room like ash. Damien stares at the photograph as if it has stolen the last solid piece of his past. Carmela stands, her silhouette sharp against the rain-streaked window. Then we find him first, she says, her voice turning to steel. Chen objects, but Carmela cuts her off. I am tired of running from men who mistake silence for weakness. If he wants my father's fortune, let us give it to him. Elias narrows his eyes. You want to use yourself as bait. Carmela is quiet for one long breath before she answers. I want to end this. No more running. We draw him out. Finish it. And disappear. Damien stares at Carmela, caught between horror and reluctant respect. He knows now that she is not chasing revenge for pleasure. She is trying to stop the next man before he writes her ending for her. Whispers spread through the underworld like slow poison. Carmela Costanzo, the rumors say, is transferring her late father's offshore wealth at a private bank in Manhattan. It is a beautiful lie, dressed in just enough truth to tempt a desperate, greedy man. The stage is a 12-story tower in the financial district. Undercover federal agents blend into the busy lobby while snipers wait on nearby rooftops. Rifles cold and patient, Carmela stands in a tailored gray suit, a wire pressing hard against her skin. Damien stands beside her, jaw clenched, eyes moving over every exit. Neither of them pretends to be brave. They simply stand there because fear has nowhere useful to go. 2 blocks away, Elias watches 24 security monitors inside a dark surveillance van, blue light reflected in his eyes. At exactly 2:47, Marcus Valente enters through the main doors. He moves with the easy, terrifying confidence of a man who believes the world owes him everything. 2 silent armed associates flank him. Elias' voice hisses in Carmela's earpiece. Target confirmed. Stay calm. Her heart pounds like a war drum, but her hands remain steady. The elevator doors close with a soft mechanical whisper and carry Marcus to the 3rd floor. In the glass conference room, Carmela and Damien wait. Their reflections look pale in the polished walls, like ghosts waiting to be judged. Outside, millions of people live ordinary lives, unaware of the tragedy unfolding on the 3rd floor. The elevator chimes. Heavy footsteps approach. The door slides open, and Marcus Valente enters with a warm, poisonous smile. Carmela, Damien. Good to finally meet you. Silence greets him. Do not be rude, he says, stepping closer as his armed guards take their places by the door. We are blood. He speaks of their father's legacy, of old mistakes and broken alliances. Carmela looks at him without blinking. I am about to watch the feds arrest you. Marcus laughs, but there is no joy in it. Do you honestly think I walked in here without knowing it was a trap? 4 undercover agents, 2 snipers on the roofs, and SWAT nearby. Marcus says calmly, showing them Elias' surveillance van on his phone. I know everything. Carmela, I do not underestimate my enemies. Damien steps forward. Then why are you here? To look you in the eyes. Marcus whispers, his voice heavy with old pain. To explain why I have to take what is mine. The Costanzo fortune. The territories. All of it. Our father gave everything to a legitimate son who wasted it. While I spent 20 years bleeding in the dark. Thrown away because of how I was born. His pain is real. Carmela can hear that. But real pain can still become a weapon in the wrong hands. So this is jealousy. Damien spits. This is justice. Marcus snaps, lifting a tablet. You will transfer every offshore account into my control. Right now. Carmela feels the cold wire against her skin, recording every word of his unraveling. And if I refuse? Marcus gestures, and his men draw their weapons. The room explodes into chaos. Tactical agents flood the floor. Guns raised. Shouting orders. Marcus does not flinch. He looks Carmela straight in the eye. Then everyone here dies. Including you. Damien whispers. You are insane. Carmela sees the truth then. This is not a negotiation. It is a suicide mission. Marcus is ready to burn everything, rather than leave empty-handed. I am desperate, Marcus whispers. Carmela looks around and sees dozens of red laser sights trembling across their chests. One breath could turn the room into a massacre. She looks at the tablet and makes her choice. Give it to me, she says softly. Marcus hesitates. Give it to me. She repeats. If you want the Empire, take it. I am finished fighting over blood-soaked money. Damien protests. But she silences him. It is paper. Damien, it is not worth dying for. Marcus hands over the tablet, and with one touch Carmela transfers the entire fortune into federal accounts. Marcus watches the numbers vanish, and his face slowly empties. 40 years of blood money, of empires built on the suffering of thousands, vanish into a cold digital void with one quiet command. Marcus understands 3 seconds too late. He stares at the empty holdings on the screen and laughs. Dry and rattling. The laugh of a man who suddenly owns nothing but despair. Carmela stands before him, calm and unyielding, as he raises his gun and ignores the frantic shouts of the tactical team. She does not flinch from the barrel. The fortune had poisoned every hand that touched it. Letting it go feels terrifying, almost like stepping off a cliff. But for the first time in years, Carmela feels the air move around her without chains. Her silence hangs in the room like a final judgment on every violent man who believed power meant possession. Marcus' hand begins to tremble. Damien steps between them, his voice flat with the terrible calm of someone who has already accepted death. The game is over, he tells his half-brother. Your only choice is a quick grave or a lifetime behind bars. Marcus chooses a darker exit. Before anyone can stop him, he turns the gun on himself. The shot is deafening, a sudden brutal end to an era. Carmela closes her eyes. Damien does not move. Around them, agents shout and rush forward, but the room already feels emptied of time. In the weeks that follow, the old families fracture into desperate factions, tearing themselves apart in turf wars, while the federal government seizes the Costanzo fortune to fund victim relief. For Carmela and Damien, survival means disappearing completely, stripped of their names and given new identities. They are sent to a rain-slicked city in the Pacific Northwest. They choose to stay near each other, not out of romance, and not because the past has been forgiven, but because they are the only witnesses to the full wreckage. 6 months later, Carmela stands in a quiet bakery, her hands dusted with flour. Empty tables around her as cold morning light spills through the glass. She wears simple denim and a flour-dusted apron. Her hair has grown softer and longer. The haunted look from months of hiding has begun to fade, replaced by a fragile kind of peace that still breaks easily. The bell above the door chimes, and Damien steps inside, his hands rough from construction work. How was the morning rush? He asks gently. Good, Carmela says. Mrs. Chen bought 3 loaves of sourdough. He nods and sets groceries on the counter. They move around each other with careful, polite distance, like two ghosts sharing a house. They sleep in separate rooms, eat in quiet silence, and go to therapy because the nightmares still come. It is not a marriage. Not yet, maybe not ever. But it is survival. I am thinking of taking a trip, Carmela says, pausing with a cloth in her hand. Where, Damien asks. Looking up. Somewhere quiet, maybe the coast. Then more softly. You could come. He studies her face. Do you want me to? For the first time in 6 months. The truth sits between them without disguise. I do not know, she says. Some days I see the monster who married me for power. Other days I see the man who took a bullet for me, who burned his empire so I could live. We destroyed each other. Damien, we became monsters. So why stay? He asks. She steps closer. Her eyes bright but tired. Because leaving would not make me free. Not by itself. Carmela pauses, her knuckles white against the flour-dusted counter. The commission. Your father. Every man who thought I was disposable. She whispers, the old pain heavy in her voice. I spent 3 years being invisible. I will not do it again. Not even by disappearing from my own life. Damien nods slowly. So what do? We survive, she says. We bake bread. We build furniture. And we try to believe we deserve ordinary lives. If we fail, at least we tried. When the front bell chimes, a customer asks for pastries. Carmela takes one breath, wipes the flour from her hands, and turns with a warm, practiced smile that hides scars no stranger could see. Fresh out of the oven, she says. On nights when the nightmares scream loudest. When Carmela sees Marcus dying on the carpet or hears the gunfire in Switzerland, Damien is there. He does not try to fix her. He does not ask her to forgive him. He simply sits beside her in the dark and reminds her that breathing is enough. Some nights she tells him to leave, and he does. Some nights she lets him stay by the door until morning. 2 years later, a nameless letter arrives at the bakery. Carmela opens it with trembling fingers, expecting another ghost from the past, but finds only an old photograph. It is her at 16, standing beside Lorenzo. Her father is looking at her with something she had almost forgotten he possessed. Pure pride. On the back, written in elegant ink, are the words, Your father knew what you would become. He always knew. Be well, that is all the note says. No name, no explanation. Carmela stares at the faded image before slipping it into the pocket of her apron. For a moment, she opens the small drawer beneath the counter. Inside lies the diamond wedding ring she once left on Damien's desk, returned to her months ago by federal agents. She touches it once, then closes the drawer and returns her hands to the warm, yielding dough. This is the quiet truth of survival. It is not a grand cinematic victory. It is getting up before dawn when your chest still hurts. It is shaping bread with hands that once held weapons. The ruthless woman who dismantled an empire in a storm of vengeance is not gone completely. Carmela still carries her. But now she has learned that strength is not only knowing where to strike. It is knowing when to put the blade down. Carmela is living proof that power does not have to look like violence. Sometimes it looks like a flour-dusted apron in cinnamon rolls, cooling on a wire rack in pale morning light. It is the hard, private choice to keep breathing when everything inside you begs to stop. She makes that choice every morning, even on the days when the past feels too heavy to carry. She does it because she finally understands the truth. The strongest empire is not built from money, fear, or blood. It is built from the quiet, hard-won act of surviving, healing, and choosing to move forward anyway.